Thyroid function is extremely important for optimal health.
Oh, and a full year, and that lets you save. Who cares?
Welcome to a brand new edition of Ageless Energy, where we talk about how to burn fat, increase energy, and balance hormones for women over 40. Over the past 20 years as a performance coach, I've worked with hundreds of women that have the exact same struggles you do. I hope to shine some light with this podcast on what can be the most challenging time of your life and let you know there is hope to find success with your health and what you're looking for. Please share and enjoy. Welcome to the show, Dr. Heather.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We got lots to talk about today. Why don't you give our audience a chance to learn more about yourself?
Well, I am a functional medicine practitioner, and I've been practicing for about 22 plus years now. We keep adding one of those to the end of that. But I mostly work with women who are struggling with low thyroid, autoimmune conditions, blood sugar issues, really helping them go through a thyroid transformation and really get back to happy, healthy, and lean.
Awesome. How did you get into that?
Well, through my own personal journey, many years ago, I was really struggling with weight. I was struggling with hormonal imbalances and fatigue. And I went to an OB-GYN, one that was supposed to be really, really good. And I walk in and I said, I think I have a thyroid problem. I have all of these symptoms. And he said, okay, well, let's test your thyroid. And I said, okay. So he tested my thyroid. I go back in a week and he's like, yeah, nothing's wrong with your thyroid. And, I think that probably the reason why your menstrual cycle is all messed up is because you exercise too much. And I just knew at that point, I was 50 pounds overweight, 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And what he was getting to is, when women exercise too much and their body fat goes really low, then they stop menstruating. Okay, that was not what I was dealing with, but that's what he said I was dealing with. And so I'm grateful for that experience because I knew what he was saying did not make any sense whatsoever. And, as I was on my way out, he said, oh, by the way, you're probably not going to be able to have kids naturally. You're going to have fertility treatments. And I was like, all right, thank you very much. And I am out of here. So for me, I knew that I had to figure out, what was going on. I was not going to live my life like that. And that was not going to be my story. So that's what got me down this path. And, for me, I was able to lose weight. I have two healthy, almost grown children at this point. And I knew that it was my mission to really help other women who are dealing with this and truly change the face of healthcare. That's
awesome. What a great story. What's a thyroid?
Well, a thyroid is a gland that is it's a butterfly-shaped gland that sits in your neck, at the base of your neck. And essentially, the thyroid is one of the most, if you can't say one gland is more important than the other, because they all have, really important, functions in the body. But the thyroid and the thyroid hormones are one of the only hormones that have receptor sites on every single cell in the body from head to toe. And the thyroid essentially regulates your metabolic rate, right? So that's why so many women, when we get low thyroid or the thyroid's not producing enough hormones, we start to have weight gain, we get tired, we get fatigued, our hair starts falling out because the body is essentially down regulating the metabolic rate. So thyroid function is extremely important for optimal health.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you know your thyroid's not functioning properly?
Well, I think ultimately, the only way to know if your thyroid isn't functioning properly is to get tested. And I think it's really important to do very thorough testing. There's several things we can do. We can go down here. First of all, the symptoms of low thyroid that you would even think, okay, well, maybe I should go get my thyroid tested. Typically, the symptoms are you are fatigued. It's difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep. Your hair starts falling out. You may have anxiety and depression. Your hormones are out of balance. You might have constipation. Did I say weight gain? Because that's a huge one. So if you have all of those symptoms and you want to go get your thyroid checked, and most of the time in traditional medicine, when you get your thyroid checked, they really only check one marker, which is a TSH, that stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. And if that marker is high, then you have low thyroid, and then they will give you thyroid hormones. But unfortunately, mostly women have low thyroid. Men also have low thyroid, but a huge majority of people with low thyroid are female. And if that TSH is normal, then essentially they will tell you that it's not your thyroid, like the thyroid is not dysfunctioning. But in reality, there are 12 different markers that make up a full and complete thyroid panel. And most of the time, women are only getting a TSH done. And so then, they either increase or decrease or give medication based on that number alone, when there's a lot more thorough testing to evaluate the thyroid function as a whole.
So what is the lack of education or understanding? Why is they're only testing one way?
Well, the reason they're only testing one way is because when they look in their toolbox, they have one solution, which is thyroid hormones. There is no other solution. Like if you have low thyroid hormones, then they're going to give you thyroid hormones. But the thyroid can dysfunction in many different ways. The number one cause of low thyroid is actually an underlying autoimmune condition. And you can have this underlying autoimmune condition and have every single one of these symptoms, and maybe your TSH is normal. You can also have other things that are going on with the thyroid, not just that the thyroid's not producing enough hormones, but you can even have like underconversion, where your thyroid mostly produces a hormone called T4. And the body has to convert T4 into T3 for it to become active and available. But if your body doesn't convert T4 to T3, you can have completely normal TSH. You'll even have normal T4. But a lot of times they're not checking for T3, and your T3 will be really low, and you'll have every thyroid, symptom in the book. And so it's about digging and understanding the full thyroid physiology. And the reason that they don't check those things is because in traditional medicine, the only solution is to add hormones in. Or if they add hormones in and it's too much, well, they can decrease the dosage of those hormones. But the solution is very, very limited in that model.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so what are things that we can do? So we have to get a diagnosis first. That's the first step, and probably more than one or more than your family physician. That's number one.
Yeah. So I think it's important. So I created the Thyroid Transformation Blueprint. And essentially what that is first, you have to have a constant pursuit of your goals. Like you have to have some goals that you're trying to accomplish, right? So if you have issues with fatigue or energy and you've got these symptoms, you're like, all right, I want a resolution to these symptoms. Number two, you have to get thorough testing, right? That's the second pillar, because if you don't get thorough testing, you're always going to be guessing at what's going on. And I think a lot of us get stuck in this problem where we have a list of problems, but we don't know what's actually causing the problems. And so then we try to start applying a solution without really knowing the deep root cause. And so then we're just guessing. And it will only be by luck if that symptom resolves or not, because you don't really know what's truly going on. So testing is pillar number two. And then pillar number three is you have to have a complete diagnosis or analysis. And it's not just about trying to figure out what the label is, right? Like, whenever my child was 5 years old, I taught him how to diagnose diabetes and low thyroid because it's so easy. It does not take, a degree. It's very easy. You look at this number. If it is high above the lab range, then that's called hypothyroid. But it's really about, well, why do you have hypothyroid? It's not about the ICD-9 code or 10 code. It's not about the label that we give it, but asking a deeper question. Well, why do you have a thyroid issue? What is going on underneath the surface? Is it an underlying autoimmune issue, which is, a completely different path than maybe, let's just say, under conversion, or is it a pituitary issue? Like, there's so many causes to why someone would have low thyroid. And if you can analyze the testing properly, then you can apply a customized solution or a treatment plan, which is pillar number 4. So you got to get testing. You've got to have somebody to look at your lab so that you understand what's going on, not just a label, but what is the root cause of why you have these symptoms or disease processes. And then you can customize care. And when you do it that way, most women start to feel better and the symptoms go away. It's important for us to realize that when we have a symptom, it's our body's way of communicating with us that something is not right. That's how it communicates. And so, symptoms, a lot of us just try to suppress the symptom. We try to get rid of the symptom as quickly as possible. But then that leads us down to this, okay, we take a pill, we take a medication, and it essentially suppresses the symptom. It doesn't address the true underlying root cause. And then before you know it, then you got another symptom and another symptom. And we're essentially just playing whack-a-mole, right, with all of our symptoms. But if you can get down to the root cause and address why we have symptoms, then they go away because they no longer have a purpose.
So what are some of the symptoms or some of the reasons people would have low thyroid?
Well, I think, the reasons people would have low thyroid, it's hard to say, what exactly turns low thyroid on, but about 90 to 98% of women who have low thyroid actually have an underlying autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. And Hashimoto's, as like all other autoimmune conditions, they turn on at specific times in our lives. So they'll turn on when we are going through puberty or we have big fluctuations in hormones. Most of the time, it turns on after the birth of a child. And then the symptoms get worse as we start to go through menopause. Now, there's a whole host of underlying triggers that we have to look at in order to stabilize the immune system. But typically, when we have big hormonal shifts, or if we're going through a time of a lot of stress, that's when these autoimmune conditions or this low thyroid will turn on. And interestingly enough, when the immune system starts attacking the thyroid, it may take months, if even years, before you actually get a diagnosis of low thyroid.
Okay. So now we have a better idea of what to do to have a better understanding of low thyroid. And now we have some things we can do about it.
Yeah. So essentially, if you have low thyroid and you understand, what's going on underneath the surface, most ladies have an underlying autoimmune condition, right? So it's no longer a primary low thyroid situation. It's more of an autoimmune condition where you have to stabilize the immune system. And so we have to understand what are the underlying triggers that cause the immune system to attack the thyroid. And one of the big ones is insulin resistance, right? So anytime we have an insulin surge, it will cause your immune system to attack the thyroid if you have Hashimoto's. So what does that mean? A lot of us have heard the word insulin resistance, but we don't think we have insulin resistance unless we've been diagnosed with diabetes. But essentially, anytime we have an insulin surge, which is when we eat bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, cookies, cakes, candy, soda, all of those things will cause an insulin surge. Also, what causes insulin surges is stress. And many of us are locked into this sympathetic overdrive and we get addicted to stress hormones that also will raise our blood sugar. And so it's really important to understand that anytime your blood sugar goes up or you have an insulin surge, it impacts your thyroid. And not only does it impact your thyroid, every time we have an insulin surge, our body's storing fat. Insulin is a fat storing hormone. And I think you would be hard pressed to find someone who had a weight issue that did not have some kind of underlying blood sugar issue, even if you don't have prediabetes or diabetes. So even if you have low blood sugar, you're still having insulin surges because the body's got to get sugar into the cell. And so I do a lot of master classes, and I could probably talk about insulin resistance for at least a whole day. So there's a lot to uncover with insulin resistance, but it is a huge piece of the puzzle with women trying to release weight, with women trying to increase their energy and sleep through the night. It's a huge contributing factor to all of those symptoms, in addition to the immune system. We also look at adrenal function. Your adrenal glands are two small glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they help you respond to stress. Right. So, like I said earlier, we can get addicted to these stress hormones. And even if we're not in the middle of stress, we will start thinking about the past or worrying about the future, and it creates a complete hormone release, and our body is in fight or flight. And when we have these hormones that are constantly circulating in our body, we start to gain weight around the midsection. It impacts our immune system, and it makes our body go into a place where we cannot rest, digest, and heal because we are on sympathetic overdrive. Another big one is food sensitivities. Most women who have a thyroid issue will have a gluten sensitivity. I'm not sure about in Canada how your gluten is processed, but here in the United States, gluten has been essentially, we can think of gluten as a poison because of how it's been processed, how it's been hybridized, how we dump loads of chemicals and herbicides and glyphosate on the wheat products. And it really creates a huge issue with our immune system. And the research is now showing that when women who have Hashimoto's eat gluten, not only does it cause the immune system to attack the thyroid, but also the cerebellum in the brain. And so it's a huge issue here in the States. And there's other food sensitivities that women will have in common, but each person is their own individual. So really understanding what those food sensitivities might be is huge because it impacts not only your immune system, but your gut health and your thyroid. So those are kind of big ones that we look at.
One of the things I would like to ask of you guys is that some of you know that I don't run ads on this show and don't plan on in the immediate future. So the only ask I have for you is that you help us spread the word so we can help more women burn body fat, increase energy, and balance their hormones. And the only way that we can do that is if you can rate and review this podcast. So the single thing that I could have you do or could ask of you is to leave a review. It'll take 5 minutes or one swipe of the thumb. It would mean the absolute world to me. And more importantly, you could change the world for someone else. As many of you know, there's plenty of women that struggle in this age group for balancing hormones, increasing energy, and burning body fat. So if you could help spread the word, that would make a big difference in our life and probably someone else's as well.
Yeah, there's so many different ways we could go with this. My gosh, I got a dozen questions. Okay. There's a lot of different steps we got to go through. So we're looking at immune system. Share with our audience what they can do to improve their immune system if that's one of their underlying causes.
Yeah, I think looking at all of those things that balance the immune system. So when you have an autoimmune disease, it's not like you can just go get a supplement to boost your immune system, right? So when you have an autoimmune condition, the immune system is out of balance. It's not about boosting the immune system. It's about balancing the immune system. And so you've got to deal with all the triggers. And so like I was talking about earlier, in order to balance the immune system, you got to balance your blood sugar. You got to balance your hormones. You've got to get rid of food sensitivities. You've got to make sure you don't have leaky gut. So everything that we do to and with our bodies, it impacts the immune system. So you've got to dig really deep. Another big thing is uncovering underlying infections, whether it's bacterial, viral, and also biotoxins with mold and Lyme. All of those things play a huge role.
Even more to talk about.
Yeah. So it's when you're dealing in a functional model and you're dealing with thyroid, I think that's why it's so frustrating, because women go to the doctor and they say, you have low thyroid. Here, take this thyroid hormone and you're going to feel great. So the expectation is that they take this pill, all of their problems are going to be over. And it wouldn't be such a big deal if all they had to do was take that tiny pill and move on with their life. But it's oversimplifying a huge issue, which is why so many women are completely frustrated. Their symptoms only get worse with time. They're not getting better. And they just get on this, hamster wheel. And then they start getting excuses like, well, it's just your age. Well, that's just what happens when you go through menopause. Well, that's just what happens. It drives me bananas. I was talking to a patient this morning and she said, Dr. Heather, I get these little blisters on my hand and they pop and they peel and they itch and they hurt. And my doctor said it was because I was 38. She goes, I've listened to you. I'm like, does that make sense to you? She goes, absolutely not. She goes, I know other 38-year-olds that don't have this. I'm like, lots of them. It's not because of your age. It's because likely you have a food sensitivity and your immune system is responding to that. And so it's interesting because that's why women start getting on this craziness of it's just your age. Oh, it's menopause. And I've heard it from when you're 35, oh, it's just your age at 35. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do we have to look forward to for the next 70 years if that's where we're at 35? So it's not about our age. Yes, we go through different phases. Yes, there's different, things that we go through as we go through different hormonal phases and stages in our lives, but none of it should be disease and loaded with lots of symptoms. And so, yes, this whole thyroid issue is not a simple issue. It can be very complicated, but it's really important. That's why testing is so important, because when a patient comes through our clinic, we do all of this testing so that we can say, okay, what is it that we're dealing with? Right? Like, what is it that we are dealing with this unique person who's sitting in front of us? Like this morning, the patient that I accepted into care, she had prediabetes. She had fatty liver. She had an underlying viral infection. She had issue clearing mold. She had some hormonal issues and hormonal imbalances and food sensitivities. So that's what that person was dealing with. And then we are going to customize care to handle and address all of those issues and then retest to make sure that she's doing good. And make sure that she's progressing and not just with her symptoms, but with actual data so that the symptoms don't just go away temporarily and then they all come back.
So what are you doing with someone like that? I mean, I would say that's extreme, but maybe that's more of the norm. When you have someone that has so many things to work on, how are you, like, where do you get started? Like, yeah. Sorry, let me finish. If there's someone listening right now that feels like they're having so many issues and they don't know where to start, how can you help them?
Yeah. And I think it's important. Most of my patients are like that. So it seems like an extreme for someone maybe who hasn't dealt with this, but I would say most of my patients are in that situation. And I would say if there's an underlying autoimmune issue and you're having all of those symptoms, then there is always a reason, right? There may not always be a diagnosis, but there's always underlying dysfunction that we can attribute to those symptoms. And that way we can create the path forward. Like for that person, essentially I've created a model where it's easy to know where to start and start in a way that a patient can implement, because that's what a lot of us as practitioners struggle with, implementation and follow through. And how does someone start to go down this path? And with her and with every patient, essentially, we start making sure that all of the detoxification pathways are open. All 3 phases of detoxification are working properly. We do an elimination diet kind of at the same time. And then we start moving down whatever else might be a high priority once we're done with that phase, right? So then we start working on blood sugar, and then we start working on clearing biotoxins out. And you really, when you're dealing with patients like that, we want it to be really easy as the patient. We want it to be as simple as taking a pill. But it's really important that you are with someone who can coach you through these things, because this can be very complicated and frustrating if you don't know exactly what you're supposed to be working on.
So take us through. Well, let me I'll just comment on that before my next question. I think it's interesting because sometimes, like, we work with not quite on that level where you're at, but we do nutrition, we do fitness, we do our own coaching, and sometimes, like, not sometimes, we get a lot of people that say I should be able to do this myself, or they're frustrated, like, why can't I figure this out? And I think, like, we've been doing this for a long time, and it's still challenging, like balancing macros or underlying why. It's not just you're missing your workouts. Why aren't you getting your workouts in? Like, there's a whole underlying cause. And then including there's a step-by-step process to get you moving. But I think that's an interesting point that you brought up, because it's not just a simple answer like a pill, potion, and powder. It's not like you need some type of expert, you need some type of coaching to get you through the stages. And then it's not like, I mean, I'm not quite sure how you teach or you work with your clients, but it's not like a couple weeks or a 21-day fix. You've been living like this for 30 years. You got to dig deep and put in the work to get yourself cleaned out properly.
Yeah, I think that's a couple of things. Number one, this has to be a lifestyle. This is not a quick fix. It's not a 30-day weight loss challenge, a 90-day weight loss challenge, or something like that, because that's what we all get sucked into, right? Because the weight is probably one of the biggest things that we struggle with. And we get stuck because we want to lose weight. And a lot of us, we have a threshold of how much we can exercise, what we're supposed to be eating, right? Some of us, especially with autoimmune conditions, if we jumped into, an expert level fitness challenge, we would crash and burn and would not be able to work out for 2 weeks just because of recovery. So it takes somebody, to really understand and look at you as an individual person and what you should be eating, right? So some people require higher protein than others. Some people, require different macros than others. Some people can, they need more weightlifting and weight training versus cardio, and the amount and intensity and all of that depends on an individual. And so this is what I typically say. The fifth pillar is that you need a coach, but you also have to be coachable, because I'm sure that you know this, and you've experienced this as well with the world of Instagram and Facebook. It's amazing because we can all get our information out there. It's also equally not amazing because there's so much false information out there, and false expectations that you should be able to turn this around in 30 days when in reality, that's not how the body truly works, and that's not how we get lasting results. And I think that you can certainly starve the body and lose some weight, but it's not going to stay off. And you're just going to gain all that weight back plus more. And I think that that's more detrimental to the health and the body than anything else. So definitely, why wouldn't you work with a coach that has been there and done that, right? Like, why? It's taken me 20 years to learn all the information. It shouldn't take someone else 20 years. They should, piggyback off of your experience and knowledge to get them there the fastest way possible, in the healthiest way, with lasting results.
Yeah. And it seems like we work with mostly women 40 plus. And it seems like a lot of them have done the diets and the fads. And you still get the few, but we're getting more and more people that are like, I'm so tired of short term going, like putting themselves through that damage of losing a bunch of weight, gaining all back. So I feel like you're speaking to our audience here and helping them understand, like, there's other ways and there's probably underlying issues, but if you find someone to work with, you can actually make a difference in your life.
Yeah. And I think it takes out the frustration, because with every failed thing you do, it creates a lot of you feeling like, or the client or the patient feeling like a failure. And then they give up hope, and then they end up not doing anything or reverting back to terrible old habits. Instead of understanding that this whole health thing that we're on is a journey, and it doesn't end until the day you're in the ground, right? So once you hit a goal, well, what are you doing to maintain that goal? You can't just go back to old habits and old things that you were doing before, because you're going to continue on this roller coaster. But if you have a group of people around you that are coaching you through this process, you are connected to other groups or ladies that are on this same path to help encourage you and to help you create this as a lifestyle and overcome obstacles, your results are going to be so much different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Dr. Heather, it's about time to wrap things up. Could you share any last words that you want to share, if you have any?
Sure. I think that it's really important to understand that we were born to heal. We are self-healing organisms, and our bodies are born to heal and function optimally. Sometimes there's underlying imbalances that need help for the body to overcome, but everybody is born to heal. So don't give up.
I love that. And okay, how are we getting a hold of you? Website, services, products, anything you want to share?
Yeah, so there's two ways. One, you can go on Amazon and purchase my book. It's called The Thyroid Transformation Blueprint. Also, I have a pretty large group on Facebook. My Facebook group is called Happy, Healthy, and Lean. And I will do a masterclass pretty much every single month. We do deep dives on all things low thyroid and the struggles that we deal with low thyroid. And those are really the only two ways that you can get in touch with me in my group and tribe.
Fantastic. All right, Dr. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. That was absolutely fantastic. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.